Hello my friends and welcome to 7 True Paranormal Encounters from Reddit. Have you ever been visited by an apparition? Ever wanted to? Well, according to these humble Redditors, they've already received their visits. And they're ready to tell you all about it. Here's 7 True Paranormal Encounters from Reddit users. From 3 until 13, I lived in a nice home out near Yosemite National Park. Nothing super spectacular about it. 4 bedrooms, a den, dining room, the norm. Just a little down the dirt road, and if you've ever been around those parts you'll know, miles away from civilization. My whole childhood, I was visited by this girl in white. She never spoke. I would just wake up at night and see or feel her there. I asked my dad, and his response every time was, "The men in our family can see ghosts." My rationale of this, I'm skeptic and I remain that to this day, but the story I'm telling made me question, was that we had some sort of mild schizophrenia running through our family. It didn't bother me. She didn't look like other people. There was something off about her. After my father died, my mother decided to sell the house and went through a realtor. We never once had contact with the buyers, only knew them by name. The buyers had a son who went to the same school as our old neighbors, dear friends of the family. And the son apparently came to school without sleep repeatedly, complaining that there was a girl who watched him at night, and that he needed to get out. Ugh, shivers up my spine every time I remember this. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, and of course as we moved from house to house, I got the basement bedroom most times. I was fine with this being the eldest. Just let me have some privacy. The last home I lived in with my family before I moved out on my own, I spent 5 years in the basement bedroom. Through those 5 years, I experienced amazing night terrors and sleep paralysis on a very regular basis. There were a few incidents where I would just wake up and the closet on the far side of the room would be open just a crack, and I'd stare at it knowing I'd closed it. And then it would creak open just a touch more. Then after what would seem like hours, slowly close and click shut. Not a slam, not a regular door close, a very slow, methodical one, if that makes any sense. On 2 specific nights I woke up, not suddenly like something jarred me, but just kind of rolled over, and at the foot of my bed I saw a girl standing there. She looked very young, black hair, dark dress, and she didn't move, didn't make a sound. And I never could make out her face. Both times I reverted immediately back to being 5 years old and hid my face under the sheets while my heart rate went full marathon pace. Eventually I would feel like it wasn't there anymore, and I'd peek out and it would be gone. My parents are not believers in anything paranormal, and I never told them anything, thinking they would think I'm crazy. I chalked it up to night terrors and extraordinarily realistic dreams during paralysis. I moved out and far away. My next sibling in line got the coveted adult room in the basement, and life went on. I had a few Christmas visits and other holiday runs at some point, and I remember going into that room to get a chair and seeing the closet door nailed shut from the outside. I didn't question it, as there's no way I thought it could have related to my experience. Not long after that, on another return visit home, I went and checked the door to that closet. The nails were gone, but in place was a padlock, and there were clearly bundles of sage and sweetgrass hanging above the closet, and above the only exterior window inside. I worked up the nerve to ask my mom what the deal was with the basement, and she reluctantly told me that my brother had seen things come in and out of the closet, and that he had a girl appear beside his bed and terrorize him on several occasions. Now, no joke, I still haven't told them what I saw, because I don't want them to have to move or be bothered with their basement over this. They're both retired, all kids have moved out, and they seem happy. They have also since gutted and renovated that whole basement. I've stayed there a few times now with my wife, and nothing's happened. I've suffered from insomnia as far back as I can remember. I was in the 2nd grade and it was really early in the morning, I think around 5 or so. I had a little TV on my nightstand and was definitely watching Lord of the Rings on VHS. I had the volume up super loud because my ceiling fan always made a ruckus throughout the night. I was super into the movie when all of a sudden, all the sound around me started to slowly fade away. I remember I became confused and reached to turn up the TV thinking that it had broken, but then I realized the sound of the fan had also faded with it. The only way I can describe it is comparing it to someone turning down the volume on a car radio. I was suddenly overwhelmed by an intense feeling of euphoria. I have never experienced anything like it. I can absolutely describe how utterly at peace I felt. I was able to comprehend what was happening, and then it just clicked in my head that I was dying. Keep in mind that I'm in 2nd grade, so this is a pretty intense conclusion, but I just knew. I rolled over on my back, ready to, and excited to, accept my fate. That was when I saw it. There was a large white figure in my doorway, just hovering and pulsating a white aura. I quickly panicked and began calling out for my brother. His room was across the hall. The figure glided to the end of my bed and just sat there, watching. I'm not really sure how much time had passed, but the figure suddenly vanished, sound came back, and the euphoria disappeared. I jumped out of my bed and ran into my brother's room, where I practically flew onto his bed. He woke up, and when he saw how panicked I was, began to panic as well. I was hysterical and just kept telling him it was a ghost. We did what any other kids would do and hid under the covers. After a while we got anxious, and I bravely made a peephole in the blanket to check the time on the clock, hoping that it would be daylight soon. 5:30. The clock read 5:30 in the morning. Then the phone rang. And it rang, and rang, and rang. Me and my brother started to panic even more. Then silence. Once again it began to ring, and ring, and ring, and we jumped out of bed and took turns running from light switch to light switch until we had a light path to the living room. Our house was 5,000 plus square foot, so this was not an easy task. We got to the living room and watched cartoons until my mom woke up. She was livid, yelling at us for being up so early. I told her I saw a ghost, which only made her more upset. My brother, who was always tormenting my irrational fears, got mad at her and started telling her this wasn't a joke, and it wasn't my imagination. I started telling her to check the phone, because I saw a ghost around 5:30, and it must have been the ghost calling. Kid logic. She went to check the phone and went to the other room for a while. Suddenly, she wasn't upset anymore. When we asked if it was a ghost, she said it was a telemarketer. She was so nice about it, she let me sleep in her room for the next few days. I thought maybe since it was my brother's birthday that day that she just didn't want to argue, but she never let me sleep in her room. I got up from school on the 15th, and I saw the ghost in the early hours on the 13th. My mom called me into the family room and told me to sit in her lap and that she needed to tell me something. I obliged. My great-grandmother passed away in the hospital at 5:30 a.m., and the phone calls were my grandma calling to notify us. Me and my great-grandma were extremely close. To this day, I get chills thinking about it. I know that there are a few ways to explain the occurrence, but I know for a fact it was 100% a paranormal experience, and my mother and brother still back me up on it today. A few years ago, I moved into an old one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. This was my first time I'd moved into my own place, and it was nice to not have crappy stealing roommates. The apartment block, which only had 8 units, was built in the 1930s. It was moldy, and the rent was interestingly cheap. The first few months go by without a hiccup, and I'm enjoying living in this place. I come home from work one day, and I go into my bathroom. Something catches the corner of my vision. The board which covers the manhole in the ceiling that has access to the small attic space is broken in 2 pieces on the ground. I remember standing there for about 2 minutes trying to make sense of it. I examined the 2 broken bits of wood. The wooden board is about an inch thick and would have taken Bruce Lee to break it in half. My initial thought is that the landlord may have sent an electrician around without informing me, and they may have been working in the attic space and broken the board, if that makes any sense. But the more I think about it, the less likely that scenario seems. Anyway, I take a couple pictures and email them to the landlord asking if anyone was on the property that day. I receive a reply around 7:30 a.m. the next morning. Her email reads, "Please call me as soon as you are able to. I was worried thinking someone has broken in." I call her and she explains that the last 2 tenants said the exact same thing happened to them, amongst other things, and she will send someone around to replace the wooden board. If I wasn't so busy with work, I would have thought more of it. I lay awake at night for the next few weeks thinking what caused that board to break in half in the first place. My first conclusion is that someone was living up there in the tiny attic space of this apartment, which seemed very unlikely. About a month later, I wake up suddenly around 4 a.m., which is very unusual. I have so many goosebumps, it feels like someone is rubbing their hands on me. Everything is silent for ages, but then I hear this weird sound coming from the roof above my bed. It's this dragging sound, like someone is pulling a sack of potatoes along the floor. I freak out and I'm frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I think. There's no way a possum could make that sound. After about 5 minutes of listening to this intermittent dragging sound, I work up enough courage to turn on the light and walk in the bathroom, where the manhole is, armed with the cricket bat I keep next to my bed. The new board covering the manhole is broken in 2 pieces again. I felt sick. I turn on the bathroom light and stare at the black space where the cover on the manhole would be. As tough as I like to think I am, I'm 100% frozen with fear. The dragging sound has stopped, but there's another sound. There's a whispering. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me at first, but the whispering was clear. It was coming from the attic. Please let me stress at this point that I'm not making any of it up. The whispering sounds like children's voices. It's gibberish mostly, but there's one sentence that I can make out. It's your turn. It's your turn. It keeps repeating. I turn on every single light in the apartment as well as the TV to try to make things feel normal. It's about 5 a.m. and it's still dark outside because it's the middle of winter. I'm watching the TV to try and unwind. Then the fuse blows and everything goes silent. My pet parakeet in the kitchen, who never makes a sound at this time of night, starts squawking like he's being strangled. I've never even heard him make these sort of noises. He's literally screaming. I grab my car keys and I run out of my apartment and I go sit in my car. I wait until the sun comes up. People are now walking their dogs and starting their day, and this comforts me enough to go back in my apartment. The front door is open, but I don't think too much of it because I figured I booked it out of there so fast I didn't even close it. Everything seems normal, and I go to the kitchen to check on my Dexter, my pet parakeet. He's not in his cage. I let him out most days, but there's 100% no way of him getting out unless someone lets him out. I start to feel sick again. I look around everywhere, but I can't see him. All the windows are closed and the wire mesh screen door on the front door is closed when I came up. I open the door to the bathroom. Again. I open the door to the bathroom, and I can hear him splashing around. Poor little Dexter is half drowned in the toilet. I take him out, wash him and dry him off. I thought he was going to die because he was breathing in water. I was so confused. The only logical explanation is that someone did this. At about 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of what happened. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too," she said. "I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I only moved out 3 months ago. I heard the whispering again on a few occasions, and twice the manhole cover moved, but wasn't broken. The landlord called me last week. She sounded embarrassed and said that the new tenants, a young Japanese couple, had begged her to speak about the same stuff that has been going on there. Forget that. It's their turn now." Cop here. I've posted this story before, so it may sound familiar. I was dispatched to a house at about 1 a.m. for a prowler. We get there and talk to the residents. Long story short, they saw two people wearing masks, one Jason-style hockey mask, I don't remember the other, in the yard across the street. It was like 2 weeks past Halloween, so it seemed believable. We checked the area and don't see anything. 10-8. It's worth noting the residents didn't seem drunk, high, crazy at all. A few times you'll get a similar call and you'll get there to find the resident strung out on meth and seeing things. However, back to the story. An hour later we get called back. This time we have our dispatcher on the phone with them while we see the surrounding area. We, about 5 of us, are in perfect position. Dispatch tells us they can see the prowlers in the next yard. We start to move in. Dispatch says the residents saw the 2 prowlers wave and move into the shed. Guess where I am? That's right, next to the shed. I give verbal commands, bang on the door, and nothing. Pfft, fine, I'll come in after you. Doors open and empty. I even think to check for a trap door. Nothing. It is raised about 4 inches, so there isn't even a possibility of a door leading out. Again, check the area and find nothing. Talk to the residents. They said as I was moving in on the shed, the 2 people put their fingers to their lips, giving the shh sign, and then they both waved. They moved into the shed as I was next to it. We went over every possibility trying to come up with an explanation. If the caller's just messing with us, they had no prior history of it, as in repeated calls for service at the address. I'm not much a believer in the paranormal stuff, but I can still appreciate a situation where I cannot logically explain what just happened. When I was a dumb kid, my brother and I were playing around on the stairs. I was at the top, jumping around in a pillowcase. I slipped, obviously, and went tumbling down backwards. Everything went into slow motion, as things sometimes do when your life is in peril. As I was flipping over and over, the back of my skull getting closer by the second to smashing into the hard concrete basement floor, I noticed a movement coming from the dark basement. Suddenly, a large bag of dog food flew across the room as if hurled by an invisible hand with absurd precision, and interposed itself between my head and the floor. My skull smashes into the bag a millisecond later, spraying kibble instead of skull fragments around the room. My brother and I are both slack-jawed and confused. The flying bag had traveled at least 10 feet, likely saving me from death or serious injury. I used to think this was evidence of God or angels, or that I have some kind of purpose, but I realize this is evidence for nothing in particular except life is bizarre and unexpected things can and do happen. My mom was diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer in 2009. It was a struggle and the doctors didn't expect her to pull through, but she did like a champ. My mom is a fighter and, as she puts it, refused to let cancer kick her ass. Fast forward to 2012 and she decided to undergo reconstructive surgery. The surgery goes well and she is put into recovery. She spends a day drifting in and out of consciousness, which was expected after a surgery like that. The whole time she is still hooked up to a morphine drip to help her pain. After being reassured by the doctors that everything was fine, we decided to go to our homes and shower and sleep. My sister elects to stay just in case anything goes down. Fast forward to the next morning, and my sister is calling me in tears, saying that I need to get to the hospital right now. I rush up to the hospital and am pulled aside by the doctors and told that my mom has suffered some complications from the surgery and is in a coma. A half an hour goes by and my stepdad arrives. I live by myself closer to the hospital, and the doctors pull him and I into her room. They say that her lungs are filling with fluids at a fast rate. They say she is unlikely to recover, and we need to make the decision to keep her on life support or to pull the plug. We refuse to let her go like that. 3 days go by, and Mom starts showing signs of some cognitive activity. By the end of the week, she fully wakes up. The relevant part happens after she wakes up. She looks at my stepdad and I and asks when we came into the room. We tell her we've been there all week. She seems really dumbfounded by this, and replies that she's only been in the room for a day or 2. She then asks where her grandmother had gone. This creeped us out. My great-grandmother passed away in early 2007. When my stepdad tried to explain this to her, she replied that she had spent the last couple days with her talking about the family. She said that Grandma got really worried and told her that she can't give up because she had children to take care of. According to my mom, around the time Grandma said this, Mom became aware of us being in the room and Grandma was gone. It was really weird to hear her talk about it. To this day, she has no recollection of being in a coma. She knows she was now, but all she can remember is spending a few days in the hospital with my grandmother, talking about the family. All of these stories were taken from a thread on Reddit. If you'd like to read these or other stories, the link is in the description below. That's all the time I have for today, my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening. I'm Amori. Now, listen to the spooky tunes. I'm armed with the cricket bat I keep next to my bed. Cricket bat. Cricket bat is hard to say. From 3 until 13, I lived in a nice home out near your... Can't even say it right. A few years ago, I moved into an old one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. That is a loud helicopter. Alrighty then.